The first time my family saw my name on the front page of a national newspaper, they thought it was a mistake. My mother called the newsroom 3 times that morning. My father emailed the editor. My older brother, Ryan, left a voicemail so angry the receptionist saved it and sent it to me with the subject line, "You'll want to hear this." But by then, it was already too late. The story had been published. The evidence was public. The people my family had spent years trying to impress were reading every word. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one standing in front of them with my head down. They were. I sat in a glass conference room on the 22nd floor of our office building, watching my phone light up again and again. Mom, Dad, Ryan. Then a text from my mother. "Claire, please call us. This is destroying the family." I stared at those words for a long time. Destroying the family. That was the same phrase they had used 11 years earlier, when they forced me to apologize for something I didn't do. That was the phrase my father whispered through clenched teeth while my mother cried into a tissue. Not because I was hurt, but because people were watching. That was the phrase Ryan used while standing behind them, silent and smug, knowing the truth but letting me take the blame. Back then, I was 22 years old. I had no money, no power, and no one willing to believe me. So I did what they told me. I stood in front of an entire room full of people and confessed to a lie. I watched my reputation burn, while the real guilty person walked away clean. Actually, he didn't just walk away. He got promoted. Looking back, I should have realized that day wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs. Because 11 years later, the truth came back. And this time, it came with documents, witnesses, signatures, and a headline my family could never bury. But to understand why they panicked when they saw my name in print, you need to know what they made me do first. People often say family is supposed to be the one place where you never have to prove yourself. I spent 22 years trying to earn a place I already should have had. My name is Claire Bennett, and I grew up in a small town outside Indianapolis, Indiana. From the outside, we looked like the kind of family other people admired. My father, Richard, managed a manufacturing company that had been in town for decades. My mother, Diane, volunteered at church every Sunday, organized charity drives, and somehow remembered everyone's birthday. My older brother, Ryan, was the golden child. Captain of the high school baseball team. Business degree. Confident. Funny. The kind of person who could walk into a room and have everyone laughing within 5 minutes. Then there was me. Quiet. Responsible. Always trying to make life easier for everyone else. I wasn't jealous of Ryan. Not really. I just wanted someone to notice that I was trying, too. When I was 12, my father gave Ryan a used pickup truck for his birthday. For my 13th birthday, Mom baked my favorite chocolate cake. As we were cutting it, Ryan announced he'd accidentally backed the truck into our mailbox. Dad laughed. Boys will be boys. The next morning, I helped Dad replace the mailbox before school. He thanked Ryan for helping. Ryan hadn't even woken up yet. Little moments like that became normal. If Ryan forgot to pay a bill, Dad called it being busy. If I forgot to take the trash out once, I got a lecture about responsibility. If Ryan came home late, Mom worried that he'd worked too hard. If I came home 10 minutes late, she asked why I wasn't answering my phone. Looking back, I should have recognized those little differences for what they were. Not accidents. Patterns. Still, I loved my family. When Dad developed back problems, I drove him to physical therapy every Tuesday after work. When Mom had surgery on her shoulder, I moved back home for 6 weeks to cook, clean, and help her get dressed. Ryan stopped by twice. Both times, he stayed less than 20 minutes. Mom still called him such a thoughtful son. I smiled and said nothing. That was my role in the family. Keep the peace. Don't complain. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. After college, I accepted a position as an accounting coordinator at a regional construction company. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. Numbers made sense. People didn't always. Within 3 years, I'd earned the trust of my supervisor, Karen. She once told me, "Claire, you're the kind of employee every company hopes to find." I carried those words with me for months. Because at work, I wasn't invisible. I was respected. Then something unexpected happened. Dad's company merged with another business. Ryan was hired into management almost immediately. A few months later, Dad convinced me to apply for an opening in the finance department. "We'll finally all be working together," Mom said excitedly. "It'll be wonderful." I hesitated. Mixing family and work had never sounded like a good idea. But Dad insisted. They need someone they can trust. Those words meant everything to me. Someone they could trust. For the first time, I thought maybe my parents finally saw me for who I was. I accepted the job. The office was only 20 minutes from my parents' house, and before long, Sunday dinners became conversations about budgets, clients, and upcoming projects. Ryan loved being the center of attention. He'd interrupt meetings with jokes, take credit for ideas that weren't his, charm clients into believing he had everything under control. People loved him. I noticed something different. He rarely finished what he started. He forgot deadlines, ignored emails, asked me to double-check reports that he was supposed to complete himself. "You're better with details," he'd say with a grin. "You're saving my life, sis." I stayed late countless evenings correcting mistakes that no one knew he'd made. Not because I wanted recognition, because I didn't want the company to suffer, or Dad, or our family name. One evening, Karen stopped by my desk after everyone else had gone home. She placed a folder in front of me. "I've been watching your work." I looked up. "You have?" She smiled. "We're creating a new senior financial compliance position." My heart skipped. "I'd like you to apply." I stared at her, unable to speak. It wasn't just a promotion. It was everything I'd worked toward for years. Karen leaned closer. "Don't tell anyone yet. We're announcing it after the quarterly audit." I nodded, trying to hide my excitement. That night, I drove home smiling the entire way. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hoping someone else would finally believe in me. Someone already did. I had no idea that less than 2 weeks later, everything I had spent years building would be sacrificed. Not by strangers. Not by my coworkers, but by the very people who always said family came first. The quarterly audit started on a Monday morning. For most employees, it was just another stressful week. For me, it was the biggest opportunity of my career. Karen had quietly begun training me for the senior financial compliance role. I was reviewing expense reports, verifying vendor invoices, and preparing files for the outside auditors. I loved the work. Every document had a story. Every number either matched or it didn't. 3 days into the audit, I found something that didn't make sense. Several reimbursement requests had been approved for client entertainment. The receipts looked legitimate at first glance, but the signatures didn't. I checked the approval records. Every request had been submitted under Ryan's department. I frowned. Maybe it was a clerical error. I walked into Ryan's office carrying the folder. He looked up from his phone. "Hey, little sis. I need to ask you something." "Sure." I placed the receipts on his desk. "These restaurant invoices don't match the accounting system." He barely glanced at them. "Oh, that's it?" He shrugged. "I'll fix them later." "Ryan, the auditors are already here. They won't notice." "They absolutely will." He leaned back in his chair and smiled. "You worry too much." "No, you don't worry enough." For a brief moment, his smile disappeared. Then he lowered his voice. "Just leave it alone." I stared at him. "What?" "You heard me. This involves company money. It's a few expense reports. It's falsified documentation." His expression hardened. "Claire." I said I'll handle it. I walked out with a knot in my stomach. Looking back, I should have recognized that look in his eyes. It wasn't confidence. It was panic. But I still believed he'd correct the mistake before anyone else noticed. I was wrong. 2 days later, Karen called me into the conference room. Inside sat the outside auditors. Human resources. My father. And Ryan. The atmosphere felt heavy. Karen folded her hands. "Claire." We found additional discrepancies. I looked around the room. What kind of discrepancies? One auditor slid several documents toward me. "They're connected to your employee credentials." My heart skipped. My credentials? According to the system, dozens of financial approvals had been processed using my login. Impossible. I never shared my password. Never. Karen looked genuinely confused. "Can you explain these?" "I've never seen them." Ryan sighed dramatically. "I didn't want this to happen." I slowly turned toward him. "What are you talking about?" He looked down, as though this conversation physically hurt him. A few weeks ago, you told me you were under a lot of pressure. I blinked. What? You asked me if I'd approve a couple of reimbursements. I said no. Every head turned toward me. I never said that. Ryan rubbed his forehead. I covered for you because you're my sister. My stomach dropped. No. I thought you'd fix it before the audit. You liar. Dad slammed his hand against the table. Claire. I looked at him. Dad, he's making this up. Ryan's voice cracked just enough to sound believable. I didn't want to embarrass our family. Karen frowned. Ryan, why didn't you report this immediately? He looked miserable. Because she's my little sister. I thought I could protect her. Protect me? He was burying me. The auditor spoke carefully. The login history confirms the transactions came from Claire's account. I couldn't understand it. I always locked my computer. Always. Unless. Then I remembered. 2 weeks earlier, Ryan had asked me to review a client proposal while he borrowed my office to make a private phone call. He'd been alone at my desk for almost 20 minutes. The realization hit me like ice water. You used my computer. Ryan looked offended. What? You logged into my account. I have no idea what you're talking about. I turned to my father. Dad, please. You know me. You know I would never steal from the company. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Instead, he asked the question that shattered what little hope I still had. Can you prove it? Silence. How do you prove something you didn't do? How do you prove a lie? I looked at my mother. She had been crying quietly in the corner. Not because she believed I was innocent. Because she already knew what people would say. Our family, she whispered. This will destroy our family. There it was again. Not the truth. Not justice. The family image. Ryan lowered his head. If Claire admits what happened, he said softly, the company may avoid a public investigation. I stared at him in disbelief. He wasn't just accusing me. He already had a solution prepared. Dad took a deep breath. The board meets tomorrow. If this becomes public, our name will be all over the news. Then he looked directly at me. Claire, I need you to help us. The words sounded almost gentle, until he finished the sentence. I need you to accept responsibility. For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard him. What? Mom reached across the table and grabbed my trembling hands. Honey? Please. It's only paperwork. We'll get through this together. I pulled my hands away. You want me to confess? To something Ryan did? Nobody answered. Nobody denied it. That silence told me everything. My family wasn't trying to find out who was guilty. They had already decided. Not because I had done it. Because I was the easier person to sacrifice. I stood up so quickly my chair tipped over behind me. You can't be serious. Dad's voice became cold. Sit down. No. Claire. This isn't just about you anymore. He looked around the room before saying the words I would never forget. Sometimes one person has to carry the burden. To protect the family. At that moment, I realized something terrifying. The audit wasn't my biggest problem anymore. My own family had become my greatest enemy. And the worst part? I still didn't know how far they were willing to go. I wish I could tell you I walked out of that conference room and fought for myself. I wish I could tell you I refused. That I hired a lawyer. That I exposed Ryan right there in front of everyone. I wish that were true. But when the people you've trusted your entire life all tell you the same thing, you start questioning your own strength. That evening, my parents asked me to come home. Not because they wanted to comfort me. Because they wanted one last chance to convince me. Mom had made pot roast, my favorite dinner growing up. Normally, the smell would have made me smile. That night, it made me sick. The four of us sat around the dining room table in complete silence. No one touched their food. Finally, Dad folded his hands. You know why we asked you here. I know why you asked me here. He sighed. Claire, the board has agreed not to involve the police if someone accepts responsibility. I laughed bitterly. So your solution is still the same. Blame me. Mom reached for my arm. Honey, please don't say it like that. How else should I say it? Ryan finally spoke. I made mistakes. I looked at him. For one brief second, I thought he was finally going to tell the truth. Instead, he continued, but if I lose this job, I'll never recover. I stared at him in disbelief. And what about me? He looked away. You'll find another job. Another job. as if careers grew on trees, as if reputations could simply be replaced. Dad leaned forward. Ryan has a wife. He has 2 young children. You don't. I felt every muscle in my body go numb. So my life is worth less because I'm single? No, but he has more people depending on him. I looked at my mother, desperate for her to say something. Anything. Instead, tears rolled down her cheeks. I know this isn't fair. Those 6 words nearly broke me. Not because she admitted the truth, because she admitted it, and still expected me to do it. Then stop it. She shook her head. We're past that now. No, we're only past it because none of you are willing to tell the truth. Ryan slammed his hand on the table. You think you're the only one suffering? I stood up. I wasn't the one who stole company money. It wasn't stealing. What would you call forging financial records? He looked at Dad. You see? She's trying to destroy me. I almost laughed. Destroy him? He had already destroyed me. Dad's voice cut through the room. Enough. Then he looked directly at me. If you refuse, the company will investigate everyone. Ryan will lose everything. Our family name will be ruined. Our church. Our friends. Our community. Mom whispered through tears. People will never look at us the same. There it was. The real reason. Not justice. Not love. Not even Ryan. Reputation. The only thing my parents seemed to value more than the truth. Looking back now, I should have recognized that this wasn't a family asking for help. It was a family negotiating a sacrifice. And I was the offering. The next morning, I signed the statement. Even now, writing those words makes my chest tighten. The confession was carefully written. It never explicitly said I had stolen money. It stated that I had failed to follow financial compliance procedures, accepted full responsibility for the reporting errors, and acted independently. Lawyers are experts at making lies sound respectable. When I finished signing, Karen looked at me with tears in her eyes. I don't believe this. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to scream Ryan's name. Instead, I stayed silent. Because my parents had made one final promise. We'll make this right. Once everything settles down, we'll tell the truth. I believed them. That was my biggest mistake. Within 48 hours, the company announced my resignation. Ryan was publicly praised for helping uncover internal financial irregularities. 3 weeks later, he was promoted to Director of Operations. I remember staring at the company newsletter for almost an hour. There he was, smiling, shaking hands with the CEO. The caption read, "Recognized for his integrity and leadership during a difficult time." Integrity. I nearly threw up. Then my phone started ringing. Former coworkers, college friends, people from church. Some offered sympathy. Others wanted gossip. A few simply stopped speaking to me altogether. My professional reputation disappeared almost overnight. Every interview ended the same way. We've decided to move forward with another candidate. No one said it directly. They didn't have to. My name had become associated with financial misconduct. I couldn't even blame them. If I were an employer, would I have hired me? Money disappeared quickly. My savings covered 4 months of rent. After that, I sold my car. Then my furniture. Then the engagement ring my grandmother had left me before she passed away. That one hurt the most. Not because of its value. Because it was the last gift from someone who had loved me without conditions. Through all of it, my parents never once publicly defended me. Ryan never corrected the record. No one came forward. No one kept their promise. Then, 6 months after I lost everything, I drove past my parents' house. Ryan's brand new luxury SUV sat in the driveway. My father was helping him unload patio furniture. My mother was laughing while chasing Ryan's children across the lawn. It looked like a family celebration. I sat across the street in my 15-year-old rental car and watched them. Not one person looked unhappy. Not one person looked guilty. It was as if I had never existed. I drove away before anyone saw me. That was the day I finally understood the truth. I hadn't lost my career because of a mistake. I had lost it because my family had decided I was the easiest person to replace. And as painful as that realization was, I still had no idea that life was quietly preparing the opportunity that would change everything. For almost a year, I stopped introducing myself as an accountant. The title hurt too much. Every time someone asked what I did for a living, I'd hesitate. I Do some bookkeeping. It wasn't a lie. But it wasn't the life I'd worked so hard to build either. I picked up every job I could find. I balanced books for a family-owned hardware store, processed payroll for a landscaping company, prepared tax records for a retired dentist who still kept receipts in shoeboxes. The work wasn't glamorous. Neither was the pay. But every client taught me something. Trust isn't built with promises. It's built with consistency. One small business owner, Mr. Alvarez, became the first person to believe in me after everything happened. He owned a chain of neighborhood restaurants and hired me to clean up years of messy financial records. On my first day, he slid a folder across the desk. "I've heard stories about you." My heart sank. Of course he had. He smiled. "I also know stories aren't always true." I looked at him in surprise. "You still hired me?" "I hired the woman who stayed until midnight, fixing mistakes that weren't even hers." I blinked. "How did you know that?" He laughed. "Karen called me." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Karen. Even after everything, she hadn't stopped believing in me. She said one sentence I'll never forget. Mr. Alvarez continued. "If Claire ever asks for a chance, give her one. You'll never regret it." I had to excuse myself to the restroom. Not because I was embarrassed, because after everything I'd lost, hearing that someone still trusted my character broke something open inside me. Hope. It had been buried for so long that I'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Looking back, I should have realized that rebuilding a life isn't about one dramatic comeback. It's about hundreds of ordinary days when you choose not to quit. One client became 3. 3 became 12. Within 5 years, I had opened my own financial consulting firm specializing in fraud prevention and compliance audits. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman once blamed for financial misconduct had become the person companies hired to prevent it. My business grew slowly, then steadily, then faster than I'd ever imagined. I spoke at accounting conferences, helped nonprofit organizations strengthen their financial controls. Eventually, I began consulting for corporations facing internal fraud investigations. The work was demanding, but every time I uncovered the truth, I felt like I was reclaiming a small piece of the life that had been stolen from me. I never married. Not because I didn't believe in love, because I spent years learning how to trust again. Instead, I built a different kind of family. Karen never stopped checking in. Mr. Alvarez and his wife invited me to every Thanksgiving. Former clients became close friends. I discovered something I wish I'd known much earlier. Family isn't always the people who share your last name. Sometimes it's the people who refuse to let you face life alone. Then, nearly 11 years after signing that false confession, I received an unexpected phone call. The caller ID displayed a name I hadn't seen in years. Karen Mitchell. I answered immediately. Karen? Her voice sounded different. Older. More serious. Claire. I need to ask you something. Of course. There was a long pause. Then she quietly said, I think we finally have proof. My heart began pounding. Proof of what? She took a slow breath. That Ryan didn't act alone. The room suddenly felt very small. For 11 years, I had believed my brother was the architect of my downfall. I was about to learn. He had never been working alone. I didn't sleep that night. Karen's words kept replaying in my mind. I think we finally have proof. For 11 years, I'd imagined hearing something like that. I'd imagined someone finding a forgotten email, a security recording, or a witness willing to tell the truth. But after so much time had passed, I'd convinced myself it would never happen. The next morning, I drove 3 hours to Karen's office. She greeted me with the same warm smile I'd remembered, but there was something else in her eyes. Regret. I should have fought harder for you, she said before I even sat down. I shook my head. You were the only one who believed me. She slid a thick envelope across the conference table. I've been waiting until I had enough evidence. Inside were copies of emails, audit notes, login reports, and one item that immediately caught my attention. A flash drive. What's on this? I asked. Karen folded her hands. 3 months ago, the company upgraded its digital archive. They recovered old backup files that everyone thought had been lost. My pulse quickened. The IT department found deleted server logs. I looked at her. Deleted? She nodded. They weren't erased by accident. I plugged the drive into my laptop. Within seconds, dozens of archived security records appeared on the screen. One file showed every computer login from the week of the audit. I recognized my employee ID. Then I noticed something impossible. At 8:17 p.m., my account had approved a series of reimbursements. At that exact time, my employee keycard showed I had already left the building. Another keycard entered my office 3 minutes later. Ryan's. I stopped breathing. He used my computer. Karen nodded slowly. We always suspected it. But that's only half of it. She opened another folder. There was someone else. My stomach tightened. Who? She turned over the final document. Authorization override report. Every suspicious reimbursement required 2 approvals. Ryan had submitted them. But someone with executive authority had approved them. The signature belonged to my father. I stared at the page. No. That couldn't be right. There has to be a mistake. Karen's expression didn't change. I thought so too. So I hired an independent forensic accountant. She handed me another report. The signatures are authentic. The timestamps match. The approvals came directly from your father's executive account. I felt the room spinning. For 11 years, I had believed my father was simply protecting Ryan after the fact. The truth was far worse. He had known from the beginning. He hadn't been manipulated. He had participated. Looking back, I finally understood why he'd never asked Ryan a single difficult question. Why he'd pressured me to confess before the investigation expanded. Why he'd insisted one person had to carry the burden. He wasn't saving the family. He was saving himself. But Karen wasn't finished. I need you to see one more thing. She opened a scanned email recovered from the archive. It had been sent by Ryan to my father the night before the audit. Dad, if they dig any deeper, they'll find your approvals too. We have to stop this before compliance gets involved. Claire will believe whatever you tell her. I read it twice, then a third time. Every illusion I had been holding on to shattered. They hadn't chosen me because I was the easiest one to sacrifice. They had chosen me because I was the only innocent person in the room. Silence filled the office. Finally, I whispered, "My mother." Karen looked down. "We interviewed her yesterday." I looked up sharply. "You what?" "She came to us voluntarily." "What did she say?" Karen hesitated. She admitted she overheard that conversation 11 years ago. My chest tightened. "No, she knew Ryan was lying." I closed my eyes. "And she still let me confess." Karen nodded sadly. "She said your father convinced her that exposing the truth would destroy the company, bankrupt the family, and leave Ryan's children with nothing." Tears burned my eyes. "So she sacrificed me." Karen reached across the table. "I'm so sorry, Claire." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she quietly asked, "What do you want to do?" I looked down at the stack of evidence. 11 years earlier, I had walked into a conference room powerless. Now I held enough proof to reopen the entire fraud investigation. My brother had built his career on a lie. My father had hidden behind his title. My mother had protected the secret. And every one of them believed the truth had died with my confession. They were wrong. Because this time, I wasn't the frightened daughter begging to be believed. I was the country's leading forensic compliance consultant. And the evidence sitting in front of me was about to destroy every lie my family had spent 11 years protecting. I didn't file the complaint out of revenge. I filed it because the truth deserved a chance to exist. For 11 years, my family had hidden behind my silence. I wasn't going to give them another year. Within 2 weeks, the company's board hired an independent forensic investigation. Not my firm. I refused the contract. If this was going to end, it had to end without anyone being able to say I manipulated the outcome. The evidence spoke for itself. Deleted server logs. Recovered approval records. Executive authorizations. Archived emails. Financial transactions. One by one, every piece fit together like a puzzle that had been waiting more than a decade to be completed. The investigation lasted nearly 4 months. When it was over, the board released its findings. Ryan had created the false reimbursement scheme. My father had knowingly approved fraudulent transactions to keep a major client happy and inflate quarterly performance. When the audit threatened to expose them, they shifted the blame to me. The report used careful legal language. I didn't. They framed me. There was no softer way to say it. The company terminated Ryan immediately. His professional accounting certifications were revoked pending further disciplinary action. Civil lawsuits followed. My father wasn't prosecuted because the statute of limitations had expired on some criminal charges, but retirement wasn't his choice anymore. The board voted to remove his honorary position. His name was quietly taken off the conference room that had once been dedicated to him. The local business journal published a correction. So did the newspaper. For the first time in 11 years, my name appeared beside the words, "wrongfully blamed." I thought I'd feel victorious. Instead, I felt strangely calm. Truth has a way of silencing anger. About a week after the investigation became public, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text message, a handwritten letter. It was from my mother. She asked if we could meet. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at the small park where she used to take me every Saturday when I was little. The same park where she'd pushed me on the swings and promised she'd always protect me. She looked smaller than I remembered. Older. The confidence she had worn for most of her life had disappeared. She stood when she saw me. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't." She nodded. "I would have understood." For several moments, we simply sat in silence. Finally, she reached into her purse and placed a folded piece of paper on the picnic table. "What is it?" "The apology I should have given you 11 years ago." I looked at it but didn't pick it up. She took a shaky breath. I knew Ryan was lying. Hearing the words out loud hurt even more than reading them in Karen's report. "I wanted to stop your father." "What happened?" She looked down at her hands. "I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Losing everything." I couldn't help asking the question that had lived inside me for more than a decade. "So you decided it was better if I lost everything instead?" Her shoulders shook as tears rolled down her face. "No." I told myself it would only be temporary. I believed your father when he said we'd fix it. But every day that passed, it became harder to admit what we'd done. I nodded slowly. "Because then people would have known." She looked at me with heartbreaking honesty. "Yes." That single word explained my entire childhood. Reputation, image, appearances. Always before truth. Always before me. She reached across the table. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know. I have regretted that decision every single day." I finally picked up the letter. Then I carefully folded it and handed it back. "I believe you're sorry." Hope flickered across her face. "But being sorry doesn't give us back 11 years. She closed her eyes. "I know." I stood. "So this is goodbye?" I smiled sadly. "No. This is acceptance. I've already forgiven you." She gasped quietly. "But forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation." The tears returned. "I understand. I hope you find peace, Mom. And I hope someday you stop measuring people's worth by what everyone else thinks." I walked away without looking back. Not because I hated her, because for the first time in my life, I didn't need her approval to keep walking forward. 11 years earlier, my family had sacrificed me to protect their reputation. In the end, they lost both. People often ask me whether I won. It's an understandable question. After all, the truth came out. My name was cleared. My brother lost the career he built on deception. My father's legacy collapsed under the weight of his own choices. The people who once doubted me finally knew what had really happened. From the outside, it looks like a victory. But life isn't that simple. There are some things the truth can restore. A reputation, a career, your confidence. And then there are things it can never give back. 11 birthdays, family holidays, phone calls that never happened. A father who chose integrity over appearances. A mother who found the courage to stand beside her daughter when it mattered most. Those moments are gone forever. Looking back now, I no longer see my story as one about revenge. It's a story about self-respect. For years, I believed loving my family meant sacrificing myself for them. I was wrong. Real love never asks an innocent person to carry someone else's guilt. And real family never protects its name by destroying one of its own. If there's one lesson I hope people take from my story, it's this. Never confuse keeping the peace with doing what's right. Silence may protect a lie for a little while, but the truth has a remarkable way of finding the light. And when it finally does, the people who chose honesty can sleep peacefully. The people who chose deception usually can't. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear what you think. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have accepted the blame to protect your family? Or would you have exposed the truth from the very beginning, no matter the cost? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Every perspective matters, and your story may encourage someone else who's struggling with betrayal or family pressure to stand up for themselves. If you enjoy emotional family drama, revenge stories, and real-life inspired storytelling where truth, justice, and resilience take center stage, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Every week, we share powerful stories about family conflict, hidden secrets, broken trust, and the courage it takes to rebuild a life after everything seems lost. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Until our next story, remember this. Your character is defined by the choices you make, not by the lies someone else tells about you. Take care, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next story.